Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Alyssa Tracey, and I am Director of the International Trade Program at the MEDC. Joining me today is John Worthington, CEO of IBT Online, a company that MEDC partners with to deliver digital solutions to companies working in international markets. Happy World Trade Week to everyone here today, and I'm so glad that you could all join us for this quick chat. As always, feel free to post any questions or comments you may have in the chat box, and we'll try to answer as many of those that come in as possible during our talk today. So we are going to talk about opportunities that are available for Michigan businesses looking to attract customers around the world from right here in Michigan, along with advice on how to make your business competitive in the global market. In 2019 alone, international trade supported more than 1 million jobs here in Michigan. And our task is to keep those jobs growing by increasing the number of Michigan companies that are active exporters. In a normal year, we would have logged thousands of miles across the globe to help our trade clients reach new customers in different target export markets. I think now more than ever, John, the work that IBT can do for companies is absolutely critical to maintain a company's visibility in their target markets where they can't be physically present. So to kick us off, can you give us an overview of kind of what the big picture is in terms of digital trends and e-commerce in 2021?
Alyssa, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you. And my only regret is that we're not doing this in person, and it kind of epitomizes the conversation that we're having. We're doing this online, and how we're all driven to online. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and talk about helping Michigan companies grow their exports, grow their brands, their sales internationally. And today, through force of circumstances, we really don't have too many choices. You mentioned all of those miles that people used to travel. I remember the number of times we've met in different places. We've all traveled there, and the number of times I had the pleasure of getting back to Michigan, spending time in Michigan, visiting Michigan. Well, all that is gone. I haven't been back in Michigan now for a year, and I have to say that is a great sadness to me personally. Happily, IBT Online has teams in Grand Rapids. We'll be talking about that, but I'd like to just jump to the subject of business travel. You mentioned business travel, and to try and put what we're going to be talking in context. And I was looking at the Global Business Travel Association, which was projecting that it would be 2025 before total business travel volumes return to pre-COVID. So I just want to sort of put that out there and talk about the forecast is that in this year, it's going to grow by 21%. But nevertheless, it is on a backdrop of everything that was lost before. So as we're thinking about business travel, I do think the audience needs to think that we're all looking to get out there with the vaccination programs running well in various countries and this, but please don't be under any illusion. The people that are looking at this are telling us that it's not 2021, it's not 2022, nor 23 before we're going to get to know the business travel that we used to. And these are the people who are looking deeply at this. These are people like American Express Business Travel and the rest of it. I suppose I just wanted to bring another industry sort of bellwether canary in the coal mine sort of statistic. Global Trade Exhibitions, an organization called New Globex. The global exhibition market is expected to rebound to 78% of its 2019 size, but in 2022. So again, what I'm saying is that this isn't going to happen quickly. We're not going back to business as we knew it pre-COVID. We're in for a fairly long duration of what's going to happen, which means non-business travel as we knew it, and therefore business in a pivoted digital age. And just to be put it again in its context around the world, China is expected to rebound to reach about 86% of its relative exhibition sense in 2022. UK, US, and Mexico say 80%, and Germany says 75%. So I just want to say sort of not everybody is going to come back equally either. And therefore, when looking at international markets, what does that mean for you in terms of business trade? What does that mean to you in terms of travel? So in that context, I want to now just flip the conversation to talk about the online world and really what has happened in the online world. And what can I say apart from gangbusters? I mean, it's all gone completely. The numbers out there are the contrast to what we've seen in the business travel market, which has collapsed, and in the trade fair market, which has collapsed. Two very important tools for doing business internationally. If you look at some of the e-commerce world and the logistics world, if you read people like John Pearson, chief executive of DHL Express, he talks about e-commerce and global logistics. They've provided the key to unlocking shutdowns and keep economies running and mitigating the COVID-19 impact. He's very bullish, talking about B2B deliveries. He talks about 2027, $20 trillion worth. And he talks about the purchasing behavior of technology savvy millennials. I just think it's interesting to put that out there and say, how are people looking at it? Well, B2B, business to business, international e-commerce is going to be huge. It's growing and growing rapidly. So please, take that home. That is one of the numbers I'd like to share with you. Earlier today, Alyssa and I were talking about Apple, and Alyssa had to go quickly to use an Apple device. We all love Apple devices. Apple came out with an interesting number in the first quarter of this year. Their revenue, and we're talking Apple, so $1 trillion company, their revenue went up 54%, driven by 5G mobile phones. And again, nobody was really expecting that, but what does it tell us? It does say that people who are using these 5G devices, everybody is migrating to them and using them. So, just be aware of that. I'd like to just share an Amazon number with you, because Amazon, you can't talk about international business, you can't talk about the e-commerce world without mentioning Amazon. Amazon reported its second consecutive quarter of 100 billion plus sales. And that's interesting because Amazon as well is split into two pieces which are relevant to this conversation. One, we all love Amazon because we need Amazon, and Amazon gets stuff to our door. And for business, it's an important way to get out there and do business and business internationally. But half of Amazon's operating income, that was 4.2 billion of net income, came from its cloud division. That's Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services is important, and it's driven by the continued boost from the shift to working from home that we've all experienced. And that revenue has grown by about 32%. So I'm just trying to tell you some of the big picture numbers that we should share with people to be what you can consider when you're thinking the online world. Zoom. I couldn't talk about this without talking about Zoom, because Zoom was downloaded 485 million times in 2020. It now has over 500,000 business customers, and the number of annual meeting minutes is over 3 trillion. Well, I mean, we all know that. We live it, and we breathe it. And I guess I've got one more number before Alyssa sort of handing that back and talking about Michigan, which is really what I'd like to talk about, is Google, because we can't have this conversation without talking about Google. Google, Alphabet's parent, reported earnings and rose to 55 billion in quarter one 2021. That's up 31% for Google, and YouTube up by 50%. So enough said of stats. I just wanted to sort of bring it into the context of today's meeting. We couldn't really have it without talking about what is going on in the big picture market. I look forward to the conversation and the detail of it, but that is the background of today's conversation, and some of the challenges that Michigan companies are facing, and some of the advantages that we have, because we can see in all of this the tools that you can use today to leverage your business and get out there and talk to the world and do business for the world. Alyssa, I'd like to sort of throw it back. Please tell us about what you're seeing happening in Michigan. Tell us about digital for business trends that you might be seeing. How Michigan companies, and what are the conversations that you're having with Michigan companies about digital?
Yeah, and you know what, John, I did see a question that came through before we get to some of the Michigan companies. Cameron posted a really interesting question based on some of the data that you were sharing earlier. Do you think that the lack of business travel that's not expected to resume to normal until perhaps 2025, do you think that will have a permanent effect for business travel, excluding technicians and industrial sectors who may still need to be on demand for that kind of travel? Do you believe general meetings will remain online despite the tradition of face-to-face meetings? I think it's a really good question. One that we're still all in this together and seeing what that end result is going to be. So Cameron, I appreciate you posing that question.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say for trade missions and the trade events that the MEDC is doing, we're looking to involve some sort of digital component to those missions going forward for at least the foreseeable future. We're hopeful that business travel will resume because we all know the importance of being in the same room, what that face-to-face really does to develop the relationship. And of course, you can have initial conversations online. You can even strike deals online. You can create new business partnerships online. But I think everyone has really come to realize what that physical presence can do for developing and furthering a relationship in a business setting as well. So as we pivot, as we adapt, as we look to be flexible, but also responsive to the needs, and also that's cost, it's relationship, it's everything. We're going to try to be as adaptive and flexible and integrate all sorts of components that we can into our business practices. So, general business meetings, will they be conducted in person? Will they be conducted online? I think I would say it tends to just depend on what that particular circumstance is going to be. I think you'll see some introductory conversations online, perhaps with a closing conversation in person. But John, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that, and what research you've seen to answer that kind of a question.
Yeah, and it sort of gets down to the nub of what we're really talking about in terms of the routes to market and how to do business in today's context. I guess there are some people who are following this and spending time on this. If you Google Amex business travel, it's really interesting to read what they're talking about. And so the people who are looking at this are telling us that it's going to take time to come back. That's for sure. There's no question about that. I think there's another thing that we can read about a lot. Some companies have suddenly understood how much money they were spending, and they've suddenly understood how much money they're saving. And they realize that, oh my gosh, all of that money, well, guess what? The money that didn't go into the pockets of the international business travel industry is now actually sitting in their bank accounts. And they're thinking about that money in a different way. And they're saying to themselves, well, we've actually got some pretty interesting tools, not least of which is Microsoft Teams, which is just blown out of the water everything they've done. They keep upgrading it, keeps getting better and better. Zoom keeps getting better and better. So I think, Alyssa, to go in your direction, the reality always is going to be, it's going to be a balance. There'll be forward-looking people who get out there and are innovative and are going to be deciding that they're going to travel regardless, and we're going to nevertheless take advantage of the industry in terms of travel coming back. There'll be others who are less, should we say, there are those people who will be risk averse as well. I mean, the people, I believe it's fair to say that COVID is a pandemic at the moment. People talk about it next year being endemic. And we're never going, in our lifetime, we're going to live with this for the rest of our lives. What does that mean? How comfortable are you? So I guess a great question, and we're going to see a balance. I'm sure, as is true, there's going to be people on both sides, the travelers and the non-travelers. And today we've got choice.
Right. And John, I think you brought up a really good point with those cost savings that companies are not spending on international travel. how do they maintain visibility in those target markets? What are they going to do if they're not going to be physically present, or if they're going to have a hybrid approach? What can companies do? How can they divert those funds to something even more impactful, or something that complements those, that in-person meeting with perhaps a boosted or an elevated online presence? And thankfully, the state of Michigan, through the MEDC, we do have grant resources to support companies that are boosting their online presence in a number of different ways. And John, I thought maybe you could go into, if you want to discuss some ways that IBT is working with Michigan companies to help elevate their online presence in those target markets, and what you're seeing in terms of trends, like how companies are accessing the programs that you can offer, and where they're looking, what kind of markets they're looking at entering.
Alyssa, I'd love to. I mean, clearly, there's nothing I'd love to do more than talk about IBT Online and the Michigan Online Global Program that we've got going. It's and I want to thank you. Before I really get started, I want to thank the MEDC. We've been working together for 8 years, and every single year we've been adding service to this program and making it, should we say, more and more useful and impactful for Michigan exporters. And nowhere more so than what's happened in 2020, what's happened in 2021. I mean, the pivot to digital, and we're seeing the pivot to digital. And so I would like to just give a quick, outreach to David Newhouse in the Detroit area, Chris Bozio up there in Michigan, up in the UP, Wei in the Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids area, Jake in the Lansing area, Brendan in Ann Arbor. What an awesome team. And it's thanks to them that we've been able to communicate and get the message out to Michigan companies that there are online solutions. And today, where we couldn't take you to a trade fair, well, if we can't take you physically to a trade fair, we can do it online. And I'd like to do a quick shout out to IBT Online's own international trade manager, Andrew Lawlaw, based in Grand Rapids. And really together, we've been able to communicate. So let's talk about online, and let's talk about the Michigan Online Global Programs. Basically, the thrust of them is to be able to take advantage of today's online technologies. How can we use today's online technologies to get out there and be in front of our audiences and customers internationally? Websites is an obvious go-to. If you look at websites today, the world of online and building websites, the International Chambers of Commerce tell us it's every company's #1 marketing and sales tool to get out there and do business internationally. So websites and the world of websites. We always love to, and just because everybody would bring up Apple yet again, why not? Because Apple is Apple, and Apple threw sort of $1 billion at the problem, and they created about 180 international websites. Every single country in the world, every single language has an Apple website, and that is really what drove Apple's business globally. If you have a moment, just go and look at Google and then tap in Apple international websites and have a look at it and scroll down. So the principle is be where your target audiences are. And if you want to address your target audiences and you can't go to China, you want to address your German clients and you can't get to Germany, well, today you can put a Chinese website up, you can put a German website up. And through today's search engine optimization, keyword research, you can make sure that you can be found, and that's critical, be found. And then you need to be understood. So giving people an English language American website is great, but giving them a Chinese website or a German website for those two particular audiences is a whole different experience for them. And it means that they'll understand you and understand you easily. And finally, make it easy for you to do business within those markets. So you can give them easily points of calls to action and conversions, and then we can talk about e-commerce. But the point is, the mantra is to make it easy so you can be found, you can be understood, and you can do business. And today, online, if you can do that, you're going to be successful. And there is a super high correlation. Successful exporters, they're correlated to their website. And if you have a website in the market, you can always guarantee that you'll be found. The user experience for the internet will be a completely different thing, and they will do business with you. I suppose just to answer that question, to flip it around the other way, just imagine a Chinese company or a German company coming to want to do business in Michigan with their Chinese website or their German website. I would think, Alyssa, one of the things that we might say to them is, hey guys, get yourself an American language, English language website so that the Michigan companies can find you, understand you, and do business with you. And the other flip side of that is all about international online marketing. And I mentioned Google, and I mentioned Google earlier and the growth of Google very specifically, just to talk about search and search international. Search international is only going one way, and that is up. And you have to be a part of it. You have to think it through and how it can happen for your business. Search in Canada, search in Mexico, search in Germany, search in China. Everybody is online and they're searching. Please make yourself easy to be found. And the last piece before I sort of just fling this back, Alyssa, will be social media. Social media, we all know where it's gone. You know, the numbers behind the big platforms, and those big platforms are international. I've got some lovely numbers that I want to just share with you about LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is a really interesting platform. It's one of the recommendations I would have for you today. By the way, did you know LinkedIn this year is 18 years old? Wow. I mean, there you go, 18 years old. And since being acquired by Microsoft, I mean, LinkedIn is just getting better and better. Today, it's got about 740 million users, and 76% of those are outside the US. Now, if you're on LinkedIn, you can get in touch with those people. LinkedIn is in 24 languages. LinkedIn has grown hugely, is growing hugely. It is the business-to-business platform. And I do encourage you to use LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn as company registrations. Today, there are 55 million companies registered there. Register your company on LinkedIn. Register your company internationally on LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn internationally and use LinkedIn focus groups, because focus groups for every industry are out there, and it's an amazing way to do business. So it is thanks to the MEDC. We have these programs. It's called the Michigan Online Global Program. Essentially, it does two things. One, it helps you build websites in all your target markets. And two, it does the marketing that we're talking about. That's search engine marketing and social media marketing in the world's markets. And you can take advantage of that by being in touch with Alyssa and the awesome team that I've mentioned, the MEDC, the International Trade Manager, which is great because they're out there, they're talking to the companies, they know the companies, and they're helping companies, and they've got a range of solutions. We have a question from somebody now. Who is that? Who is Andrew Lolo? Alyssa, there you go. Answer that.
All right. No, great question, Andrew, coming through. John, appreciate all those. First, before we dive into Andrew's question, just want to thank you for that context. There are so many international websites. There's so many ways for companies to get into some of these different markets digitally that we may have not even considered or needed to consider ahead of all of this shift in how we're doing business. So it's great to know just how much opportunity there is out there on some of these common platforms that we're already doing business on. We're already marketing our companies on LinkedIn and on our own website. So how do we then take that next step to be found, be understood, and be easy to do business with? Andrew, is it possible to use a localized website to find and recruit new distributors? So this is apart from, I guess, that end user customer that companies typically think of. You want to sell into a market. Who's going to buy my product? Who's the customer? But if we're looking for new distributors as kind of that second kind of intermediary or initial launch pad, how can a localized website make that happen? I know we're coming up a little bit closer to time. So John, do you want to talk about how IBT can perhaps help companies find distributors as opposed to maybe the end user and how that may differ?
Sure, love to, and love the question, Andrew. So I mean, the beauty of what we've been talking about, Alyssa, is the web, and how the web can transform the go-to-market business. And the beauty, we were talking about e-commerce. In business-to-business e-commerce, you can go direct. You can go direct to your client and deal directly. Alternatively, you can be very, very supportive in your business distributor model. For those companies that engage with distributors and use distributors, again, the number one tool you can put out there is a website in a local market. Say you are looking for distributors in Italy or looking for distributors in Mexico. Put a localized website. On the home page, you put seeking distributors, recruiting distributors, and you do all the keyword research. Click here if you want to be my distributor. A problem that you then have is that you'll have an abundance of people clicking and submitting details. So it's quite, the smart thing to do is put some sort of criteria that you want. You know, what sector are you addressing? How long have you been in business? And you know, give us information about your business when they're submitting it. So a sort of landing page with questions. But no, today I would say a good part, at least 30% of what we're doing, is helping businesses recruit distributors in their international markets and then support the distributors with product information linked to the distributor website and distributor contacts on those websites so that they've got all the information. And so ultimately, what are you doing? You're helping grow the number of distributors and you're helping each distributor sell more.
Fantastic. And John, I wanted to go back to one point that you had made. You want to be found, you want to be understood, and you want to be easy to do business with. That I think is key, and that has changed so much over this last year. How do you do business with someone when you can't be there physically in person, and how can we help facilitate more of those connections online? From the international trade side at MEDC, we were fortunate in that our STEP grant program was nimble enough through the SBA, the Small Business Administration, to add in a new category for our grant program for e-commerce solutions. So companies that want to either integrate an e-commerce platform into their own website, if they want to use Amazon, if they want to use any other platform to help facilitate those online transactions to grow their sales and make those sales easier to conduct. Our grant program allows for up to $10,000 a year for companies, small businesses, to tap into to support those activities for e-commerce. And John, I know your team does some work in e-commerce integration, and just wanted to get a sense from you, what are you seeing in terms of e-commerce trends, and what kind of solutions can you touch on that your team can provide to Michigan companies that might be looking at e-commerce, but they just don't know where to start?
Yeah, e-commerce. Well, I would just say, I'm imploring companies here, please, do think digital for your international business. Just jumping on a couple of comments that came out of McKinsey. McKinsey was just strident in its winners and losers post-COVID. The winners will be companies that are embracing digital and embracing digital for their international sales, and therefore looking at e-commerce. Now, e-commerce is the way to go. Business-to-business e-commerce is much larger than the business-to-consumer e-commerce. So at IBT Online, of course, we have programs. It's called the Michigan Online Global E-commerce Program. Well, that's a surprise, but there you go. So the name is what it is, and we have programs to help you leverage your e-commerce into your international markets. Happily, there are excellent tools that can do it. We use all of the well-known CMSs. We use the Shopifys and the WooCommerces and the Magentos, and happily, those people are just excellent. You're not alone in your challenges, and so we have been working with these platforms and taking these platforms into all of the major international markets. So if you're seeking to grow internationally on an e-commerce platform, the solutions exist. Companies are doing it. Be one of them. And I would just say, please be in touch with the Michigan Economic International team. They understand these things deeply, and they can put you in touch with the incredible STEP programs that Alyssa was talking about, which are hugely rewarding. And on top of that, Michigan, you have your own programs which support that even further. So I do say to you in Michigan, please know how lucky you are. Not lucky at all. It didn't happen by chance. It was driven by good thought, good leadership in the state of Michigan to enable companies to have really enormous amounts of support and help, including the grant system for e-commerce. And clearly there are e-commerce solutions that exist. We'd love to talk to you about your challenges, where do you want to go, and the platforms that we can help you do this. So we see a question. Alyssa, are we jumping on this one?
Sure
Good
thing.
to see you too. Hi, Frank.
Hi,
How
Frank.
are you?
Thanks for posing that question. We'll answer this question and then we'll wrap up because we are already past 30 minutes, which is crazy. Time flies. So trademark protection and China's progress. Wow, we could talk about that for an entire day. But briefly, know that we have foreign offices all over the world with reach worldwide, but particularly in China, we have a dedicated Michigan China Center. Those individuals that lead that center are uniquely able to support companies that have IP, intellectual property and trademark protection issues that they'd like to safeguard in advance of entering that market. That can also be supported by our legal trainings with Foster Swift, which is a law firm based in Lansing that provides, through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, some complementary legal trainings on a range of topics. So they may be a resource as well that companies can tap into. The first step that you'll want to take is contacting your international trade manager. John gave a shout out to each of our 5 international trade managers earlier. Head over to our website, michiganbusiness.org/export, and we'll have our map on there of international trade managers with their contact information so you can get started and dive deep into how we can address your particular trademark protection question. I know this is something that the federal government is keeping a very close eye on. Our partners at MSU International Business Center held several webinars earlier this year on China and IP protection, trademark protection. So it's not a topic that's going to go away anytime soon. And really appreciate you bringing that up for our attention. For today, I know we've got to wrap it up, but really, really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. We've got our website right there on the screen. Got to give a shout out, John. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but John is wearing a Mackinac Island pullover. Hope to have you back here in Michigan again sometime soon. And
I love that place. Yeah, it was about 2 years ago. I had the huge pleasure. And it was Chris Bozio who said to me, we were sitting in some bar in Petoskey, he said, take that road, go across the bridge and turn right. And I did. And it was absolutely phenomenal. I can't wait to get back there. So I brought the T-shirt back. There you go, wherever it is. Love that place. Love Michigan. Love Michigan. Can't wait to get back.
All right. Appreciate it, John. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Know that you can head over to our website, connect with our trade managers, get started, go global. You've got a lot of support from the MEDC, from IBT Online, and all of our partners to help you reach the markets you want to get to and succeed once you're there. So thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.